enough time. Good afternoon, everyone. Today's press conference, and I didn't make this clear today, it's hosted by the Texas House Republican Caucus. Nevertheless, we've invited all of our colleagues to be part of it. And we welcome those people to be here for this update on this important issue affecting our retired teachers. As you can see, my colleagues are flanking us on either side here. We appreciate everyone being here in attendance, as well as those watching on the live stream around the world, even if they're not here in the state capitol. We want them to be part of this process and the public to know what we're doing. Our House members are continuing to work on the important business for the people of Texas. It's limited, of course, due to the absence of some of our colleagues, but we want to bring people up to date on this one particular issue. Please also know, and this is important, that we'll be updating you on additional issues and pending legislation in the near future, I believe as soon as tomorrow morning. We've had numerous meetings here in the Capitol with our retired teachers and are very appreciative of their support. We remain committed to doing everything we can to make sure they receive the 13th check that is on the governor's call for this special session. And I'm going to ask that our State Affairs Chairman Chris Patty will give a recap on the meetings, and Representative Candy Noble will follow to update him on the legislation that would help these retired teachers. I'll come back to close and for some Q&A. So with that, Chairman Patty, I will yield to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today for this update. You probably all saw that earlier today our House Democratic colleagues were in Washington, D.C. and met with retired teachers virtually. By comparison, these members met with retired teachers in person in this Capitol, and the only place that we could actually help them. The only place we were actually able to take a vote to give them a much-needed 13th check. It's time for the political theatrics to end and for our colleagues to come home and join us in that effort so that our retired teachers can realize that great benefit that they certainly deserve. I'm from Marshall, Texas, in East Texas. I have over 3,000 retired teachers who are eligible for this much-needed 13th check. And I will tell you that as we began this special session, and that was added to the call, they were extremely excited and appreciative. But I will tell you at this point, based on the calls and the messages that I've received, that excitement has now turned to concern. Concerned that they will not get this check. The only way that is possible is if our colleagues come back to do the job that they were elected to do and join us in passing that much needed legislation. You know, in this process, and I've learned in my 5 terms in this House, that we don't always get what we want. Every one of those sessions that I've been a part of, there have been things that I wished passed that didn't pass. There have been things that I didn't want to pass that passed. But that's part of the process. That's what we sign up for. That's what we ask people to elect us to do, to come down and fight for them and advocate for their positions and debate those issues on this House floor. Win or lose, we're supposed to show up and fight for them. We got elected to represent our constituents here in this Capitol, on that House floor, to fight and debate the issues, again, win or lose, whether we like the legislation or not. We're to respect the process that we were elected to be a part of. And I ask my Democratic friends and colleagues to come join us in that effort.
Good afternoon, I'm Candy Noble, and I represent House District 89. That is a district that's in Collin County in the DFW area. I'm the mother of a current teacher. I'm the daughter of retired educators and the daughter-in-law of a retired teacher. The way we treat Texas Texas teachers is very personal to me. I take the commitment that we made to Texas education and to our teachers very seriously. In Collin County alone, we have almost 9,000 retired teachers. The matter of a 13th check is not a luxury for many of our retired teachers. You may not realize this, but we have more than 100 retired teachers that are over 100 years old. More than 50% of our retired teachers receive less than $2,000 a month to live on. Teachers have dealt with enough truancy in their careers. They shouldn't have to deal with it when it comes to their own Texas House members. Today we will hand out a list, it will be available, of the Texas House members that are absent. Each of them have hundreds, if not thousands, of retired teachers in their districts that are waiting for them to show up. This list is constantly changing, and we're really glad that it is as more and more of our peers return to the Capitol. We're here. We're ready to pass the 13th check bill on our retired teachers' behalf. Over 440,000 Texas retired teachers need our fellow absentee House members to show up and vote. Let's end Texas House member truancy and get this bill across the finish line.
Thank you, Representatives Patty and Noble. One thing for y'all before we get to questions, I've been asked if there's opposition to this legislation to help the teachers, and the answer is no. It's universally supported. However, as you heard, it has the potential to die of neglect. Neglect by members who neglected their duty, neglected their oath, and neglected their constituents. Lost in some accounts of this conversation is why we're doing this now. And that's an easy answer. We have the money now. That was not the case when we certified the budget when we finished the last regular session. Now, and believe me, anybody who has followed the budget process understands that this is the case. So now we have this opportunity. If our colleagues really do support the measure to help our retired teachers, we call on them to come home, to get to work, and join us in voting for this bill. Anything less is just political pandering. Texas teachers and Texas voters deserve better. With that, be happy to answer any questions if y'all have them.
There was a bill to provide a cost of living increase in the House that had enough co-sponsors to pass the chamber. Why wasn't that a priority in the regular session?
Yeah, there just wasn't the money to do that. The COLA money would come directly out of the TRS retirement fund itself, and it doesn't have the actual strength to do that. That's why we proposed the 13th check. It was talked about during the regular session. We also couldn't afford it at the time. We scored these items. Now we are ready to do that. We're ready to proceed with that. In fact, Dr. Bonin, who spoke to you yesterday, chairman of our Appropriations Committee, said that he also wanted to talk about the COLA. And all this is, it has to be actuarially sound. It requires a good bit of study. How many teachers at what age? I don't want to go too far down the road. He used to chair that committee. But it's something that we would like to do, but you have to do it within the financial parameters that are offered to you at the time. That's why we're standing here today saying, let's do the 13th check. COLA, something we can sure talk about.
Not to get too in the weeds, but I thought
Please.
the COLA, it was actuarially sound. It can't go over 31 years for funding, but it was at 29, which would have been permissive under the rules.
Well, and then we're also wondering, what are we doing about the 13th check? So both of those together, we're kind of saying, let's get done what we can certainly get done and come back to the COLA. So that's something we really want to do. And again, what is the amount of the COLA and over what duration and how far back do you go? So that's kind of what's in play. But that's why we have committee hearings. That's why we bring forth witnesses. That's why we have amendments and testimony, so we can vet these things out. And the conversation you and I are having needs to be amplified by only about 60 more members, and then we have it going.
Sir, why did this 13th check legislation, with overwhelming bipartisan support, as you stated, die during the regular session after it was sent to calendars in April? Was it strictly a budget issue, like you mentioned?
Yes, sir. So the budget itself, one of the last things to do with the state budget, $250+ billion, is we have to have the comptroller to certify it to say, are you really going to have that money? And that wasn't done until very late. And what it revealed was we didn't have the money for the 13th check at that time. In fact, that was confirmed, and Dr. Bonin, yesterday when he was speaking to y'all, provided that information to you. So that's amply demonstrated. Now, the question is, if you really want to do it, now's the time to do it. And we're ready.
Has Governor Abbott indicated to you that the 13th check will be on the agenda for the next session? And he's already said he's going to call us because this one ended?
He isn't. I can't speak for the governor. He has not made that representation to me. He may have to others. We're looking at this as do or die. It needs to happen now. And there are other issues I would point out, not to get ahead of our other messages, but there are issues about the employment of the people that work in the legislative branch, that there are certain deadlines that have to be met, and another special session is going to create a catastrophic situation for the staffs who work here and their families that are counting on our health care coverage. So please understand, we can't put off these things to another time that's uncertain. We have the opportunity now. And that's why we're telling our colleagues, come home now. There are flights all day long. They can be here tomorrow morning.
Do you agree with the governor's veto of Article 10 of the budget?
You know, I think the governor wanted to send a message to people to say, come back and do all your work. And if we would show up and work, it's just an inconvenience. If people stay away and use their staffs as pawns in this process and impact their lives, that veto is going to have a much more significant effect. And so I support the governor in doing everything he can to move legislation forward.
All right, y'all, that's all your time for.
Appreciate it. Thank you.